Hey everyone, welcome to Journey into Insight, where every thought leads to growth. Have you ever wondered how two scientists, standing before the very same universe studying the exact same data, can reach completely opposite conclusions about whether God exists? It's a fascinating puzzle. One looks up at the stars and whispers, "There must be a purpose to all this." The other gazes at the same vast heavens and declares, "We don't need a creator to explain any of it." This isn't just a simple disagreement. It's one of the most captivating contrasts in the entire history of human thought. And what it reveals is less about a conflict and more about the incredible depth of human curiosity itself. For centuries, we've been told a story that science and religion are eternal enemies, locked in an endless battle for truth. But the real story is far more nuanced and, frankly, much more interesting. The very architects of modern science, the pioneers who laid its foundations, weren't rebels fighting against faith. In fact, many were profoundly shaped by it. Their logic was elegant. If a divine, intelligent mind had created the cosmos, then that cosmos must operate according to rational, discoverable laws. It was their duty and their joy to uncover them. Think of Johannes Kepler, the man who first accurately mapped the orbits of the planets. He didn't see his work as a contradiction to his faith. On the contrary, he famously said, "I am merely thinking God's thoughts after him." He saw himself as deciphering the divine blueprint of the solar system. Then there's the giant, Isaac Newton. His equations are so powerful they still describe everything from the motion of galaxies to the simple fall of an apple. Yet Newton himself wrote, "Gravity explains the motions of the planets, but it cannot explain who set the planets in motion." For these trailblazers, faith and science weren't two worlds at war. They were simply two different languages, two powerful tools used to describe the same magnificent reality. But as the centuries passed, the tone began to change. As science grew more and more powerful, explaining phenomena that were once shrouded in mystery, from lightning to disease, the need for divine intervention seemed to shrink. The universe, once seen as a stage for miracles, was increasingly viewed as a self-regulating machine. Then came Charles Darwin. His theory of evolution by natural selection was a seismic event. It provided a stunningly powerful mechanism to explain how the breathtaking complexity of life could arise over eons, all without a guiding hand or a master plan. For some, this was incredibly liberating. It felt like humanity was finally standing on its own 2 feet, intellectually free from ancient myths. For others, it felt like a profound loss, an exile from a universe that was once filled with purpose. The prominent biologist Richard Dawkins would later capture this sentiment perfectly when he wrote, "Darwin made it possible to be an intellectually fulfilled atheist." The scientific explanation was so complete for many that it left no room for anything else. Yet even the man at the center of it all, Charles Darwin, remained cautious and deeply humble. In his later letters, wrestling with the immense implications of his own work, he confessed, "The mystery of the beginning of all things is insoluble by us, and I for one must be content to remain an agnostic." The question of ultimate origins, of a first cause, simply refused to go away. It lingered just beyond the reach of his test tubes and observations. And that brings us back to our central puzzle. Why does one brilliant mind look at the intricate double helix of a DNA molecule and see the unmistakable fingerprints of a divine designer, while another equally brilliant mind sees nothing but the elegant, unguided dance of chemistry and physics? The answer, it seems, lies not in the data itself, but in perspective. It all comes down to what each person believes science is for. At its core, science is brilliant at answering the how questions. How do planets stay in orbit? How do cells divide? How do species evolve? It excels at uncovering mechanisms, at taking the world apart to see how the pieces fit together and work. Faith, on the other hand, is generally concerned with the why questions. Why are we here? What is our purpose? What is the meaning of existence? It seeks meaning, not mechanisms. The conflict we so often hear about arises when we confuse these two fundamental quests, when we demand that science provide ultimate meaning, or when we insist that faith dictates scientific mechanisms. But when we understand their different domains, a real conversation can begin. Consider the legendary Albert Einstein. While he firmly rejected the idea of a personal, interventionist God found in organized religion, he often spoke of the divine in sweeping, metaphorical terms. He famously said, "The more I study science, the more I believe in God." Now he later clarified this statement so it wouldn't be misunderstood. He explained, "I believe in Spinoza's God, who reveals himself in the lawful harmony of the world." For Einstein, God wasn't some cosmic puppet master pulling strings. God was the rational beauty, the sublime order, the deep and incomprehensible elegance that was revealed through the laws of physics. God was the music playing beneath the mathematics. So where does that leave us? Perhaps the perceived war between science and faith is really just a misunderstanding of their roles. Science gives us the astonishing blueprint of the universe, showing us the intricate how of its operation. It empowers us, enlightens us, and fills us with a sense of wonder at the complexity of it all. Faith, for those who hold it, seeks to find the why behind that blueprint. It's a quest for meaning, for purpose, for a connection to something larger than ourselves. One perspective doesn't necessarily cancel out the other. You can marvel at the mechanics of the Big Bang, as described by physics, and also wonder about what or who might have set that cosmic event in motion. You can be fascinated by the evolutionary processes that led to the human brain, and also believe that the consciousness that arises from it has a transcendent purpose. These two quests, for knowledge and for meaning, are not enemies. They are two of the oldest, most powerful, and most essentially human drives we have. Perhaps by embracing both, we don't find conflict, but a more complete and awe-inspiring picture of our place in the cosmos. Have you ever looked up at the stars and felt a sense of complete and utter awe? That feeling, that profound sense of wonder, is something humans have shared for millennia. It's what drives both scientific discovery and deep personal faith. And interestingly, the line between the two isn't always as clear as you might think. Take Francis Collins, the biologist who led the massive Human Genome Project. After his team successfully sequenced all 3 billion letters of human DNA, he wrote something remarkable. When you have a genome before you, you feel you are looking at the language of God. What's fascinating is that Collins started out as an atheist. It wasn't some sudden conversion out of fear, but a slow-burning realization born from wonder. He saw patterns in life, an intricate complexity that to him felt too intentional to be just an accident. On the other side of the intellectual aisle, you have brilliant minds like the late physicist Stephen Hawking. He famously argued that if the universe could explain its own origins, the need for a creator simply fades away. He said, "Because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing." He believed the laws of physics were sufficient to explain our existence. Yet even Hawking, a titan of scientific reason, couldn't help but admit, the universe is not only stranger than we imagine, it is stranger than we can imagine. And maybe that's the real key, the unknown. That endless, expanding frontier of mystery is what keeps both dedicated scientists and devout believers humble. It's a shared space of not knowing. Psychologists who study faith have noticed that belief isn't always about a checklist of evidence. It's more about your fundamental orientation towards reality. Some people see purpose as the very foundation of everything, the blueprint behind existence. Others see purpose as a human invention, a story we project onto a fundamentally random universe to make sense of it. Both sides use logic and reason, but they start from different fundamental assumptions. Imagine two painters standing before the same breathtaking landscape. One sees a deliberate design, a divine hand placing every tree and shaping every mountain. The other sees a beautiful coincidence of color, light, and geological processes. Is one right and the other wrong? Or are they simply describing different dimensions of the same truth? Neither view cancels out the other. History is filled with brilliant scientists who tried to hold both of these views in their minds at the same time. Think of Max Planck, the father of quantum theory. He once said, "Science cannot solve the ultimate mystery of nature because, in the final analysis, we ourselves are part of the mystery we are trying to solve." It's a beautifully humble admission. We're not separate observers looking in. We're part of the experiment. Werner Heisenberg, who gave us the famous uncertainty principle, put it even more poetically. He said, "The first gulp from the glass of natural sciences will turn you into an atheist, but at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you." These weren't naive men. They were Nobel Prize-winning physicists who fundamentally changed how we understand reality. Their point wasn't to preach from a pulpit. It was to remind us that as we dig deeper into science, our sense of wonder often deepens rather than disappears. The more we learn, the more we realize how much we don't know. And that sense of wonder is alive and well today, in fields they could never have dreamed of. Let's look at quantum physics. We now know that at the subatomic level, particles can exist in multiple states at once, behaving like waves of possibility until they are observed. The very act of looking at them seems to snap them into a single, definite reality. This is so strange, so counterintuitive, that many scientists admit it borders on a philosophical mystery. Does our consciousness play a role in shaping the physical world? The honest answer is, nobody knows for sure. Some believers look at this and see it as a hint that the universe isn't some cold, dead machine running on autopilot. They see an interactive creation, one that seems to respond to observation, almost as if it knows it's being watched. Of course, many scientists would caution against jumping to spiritual conclusions based on incomplete theories. But the mystery remains wide open, a tantalizing puzzle at the heart of reality. Then there's the rise of artificial intelligence. As we build machines that can learn, reason, and even create, we're forced to confront a fundamental question. What is consciousness? Can it exist without a soul, without a biological brain? If we can build awareness from silicon circuits and lines of code, does that mean we humans are just complex biological machines? Or does it suggest that intelligence itself, whether organic or artificial, reflects a spark of something higher, something that can't be programmed or manufactured? Neuroscience is wrestling with the same puzzle from a different angle. We can stick someone in an fMRI machine and map the brain's electrical activity with incredible precision. We can see which neurons fire when you see the color red, hear a beautiful piece of music, or feel a sense of joy. But we still have absolutely no idea why those electrical signals produce the subjective, private experience of color, music, or joy. It's what philosophers call the hard problem of consciousness. The late neuroscientist John Eccles, another Nobel laureate, was so humbled by this gap in our knowledge that he called consciousness the miracle we cannot explain. From the vastness of the cosmos to the inner world of our own minds, the more we discover, the more mysteries we uncover. For some, these mysteries point toward a divine creator, a mind behind it all. For others, they are simply the next great frontier for science to conquer, challenges to be met with reason and evidence. But perhaps the destination isn't the most important part of the journey. Maybe the real value lies in the act of questioning itself. The wonder, the humility, the shared awe in the face of the unknown. That's the common ground where science and faith can meet. Whether you see the universe as a grand design or a beautiful accident, we can all agree that it is far stranger, more complex, and more wonderful than we can possibly imagine. And that, in itself, is something worth contemplating. Have you ever felt a moment of awe so profound it bordered on the spiritual? A feeling that makes you wonder about your place in the vastness of it all? For centuries, we've been told that science and faith are at war. One is the domain of reason, the other, of belief. But is that the whole story? What if they are not enemies but two different languages trying to describe the same incredible reality? Let's start in a place where the stakes are highest. A crisis. Picture a surgeon moments before a life or death operation. They've spent years training, honing their skills, relying on medical science. Yet in that quiet moment, they might say a silent prayer. Or think of an astronaut floating in the silent abyss of space, looking down at the fragile blue marble of Earth. Science got them there, but what they often feel is something deeper, something that defies simple explanation. Astronaut John Glenn, a true pioneer, returned to space at the age of 77. Gazing out at the cosmos, he said, "To look out at this kind of creation and not believe in God is to me impossible." It was a raw, honest reaction to overwhelming beauty. Now, contrast that with the legendary astronomer Carl Sagan. He was a scientist through and through, preferring the word cosmos to creation. He saw the universe as a magnificent, self-contained system governed by natural laws. But here's where it gets interesting. Even Sagan, the champion of scientific inquiry, wrote, "Science is not only compatible with spirituality, it is a profound source of spirituality." For him, spirituality wasn't about worshiping a deity. It was about humility, the profound feeling of being a tiny part of a vast, intricate, and intelligent order. It was the awe of understanding our smallness in the face of the infinite. So, maybe belief and disbelief aren't warring factions. Perhaps they're just two different ways of standing before the great unknown. One person might bow in reverence, feeling a sense of purpose and design. Another might stare in focused fascination, determined to uncover the underlying mechanics. But here's the key. Both are captivated by wonder. Both are drawn in by the sheer mystery of existence. At their very best, science and faith share a common heartbeat: curiosity. They both start with the same simple, yet infinitely complex question. Why? Why is there something instead of nothing? Why does mathematics, a language of pure logic, describe our physical reality with such breathtaking precision? And why do we, tiny, transient creatures on a small, rocky planet, even have this relentless urge to ask these questions in the first place? Some scientists will tell you the answer is chance, a cosmic lottery of astonishingly improbable events. Others will suggest it points to a deeper purpose, a design woven into the fabric of the universe. But regardless of the answer they lean towards, they all agree on one thing: it is absolutely extraordinary. Our very existence is a miracle of probability. And in the 21st century, this ancient conversation is being reignited by new discoveries. Quantum physics is shaking the very foundations of materialism, showing us a world that's fuzzy, interconnected, and frankly, weird. It challenges our classical, common-sense view of reality. At the other end of the scale, cosmology pushes against the absolute limits of our knowledge. When we talk about the Big Bang, we're talking about the beginning of space and time itself. What came before? Science, for now, falls silent, and then there's the rise of artificial intelligence. As we create machines that can learn, reason, and even create art, we're forced to confront the very definition of consciousness. What does it mean to be a thinking, feeling being? Is it just complex computation, or is there something more? Through all of these new frontiers, one thing remains constant: the human longing for meaning. It's a thirst that science alone doesn't always quench. Perhaps then, the real journey isn't about choosing a side in a supposed war. Maybe it's about learning to hold both perspectives in our hands. Science teaches us a vital lesson: humility before the facts. If evidence contradicts a cherished theory, that theory must be abandoned. It's a discipline of intellectual honesty. At the same time, faith teaches us humility before mystery. It acknowledges that there are questions that may lie beyond the reach of our instruments and equations. Each perspective can act as a crucial check on the other, correcting the arrogance that can sometimes creep into both domains. Think about it. When Copernicus and Galileo placed the sun at the center of the solar system, it was a profound moment of humility for theology. The Earth, and humanity with it, was not the center of everything. But in the 20th century, when the Big Bang theory suggested a definite beginning to space and time, it was a moment of humility for a purely materialistic worldview, which had often assumed an eternal, unchanging universe. The dialogue continues. It's an endless process of refinement, a dance between what we can prove and what we can only ponder. The great astrophysicist Alan Sandage, who spent his life mapping the cosmos, once said, after winning one of science's most prestigious awards. It was my science that drove me to the conclusion that the world is much more complicated than can be explained by science. He felt the awe, the sense that there was a deeper layer of reality his telescopes couldn't see. That humility, not rigid certainty, might be the truest meeting point between a scientific mind and a faithful heart. It's the admission that we don't have all the answers. So, the next time you find yourself under a clear night sky, away from the city lights, just look up. Remember that every complex equation written by a physicist to describe the motion of those stars, and every quiet prayer whispered by a believer in awe of their beauty, springs from the very same human impulse, the deep, undeniable desire to understand our place in it all. Maybe we aren't as divided as we think. The scientist and the believer are both seekers. One searches for the laws that govern the universe, the other searches for the meaning behind it. And sometimes, in a shared moment of wonder, they find themselves standing in the exact same place. Because when we truly stand before the ultimate mysteries of existence, the origin of life, the birth of stars, the vast silent emptiness of space, both our reason and our faith fall quiet. And in that shared silence, perhaps we realize something profound. The universe doesn't just invite us to explain it, it invites us to wonder at it. In the end, maybe belief and disbelief are not opposite shores, but two different lights reflecting on the surface of the same deep water. Each one is trying to glimpse the depth that lies beneath. Science gives us the incredible tools to measure the universe, to map its galaxies and decode its laws. Faith gives us the courage to keep asking why any of it matters. And between those 2 points of light, humanity walks its path, always questioning, always exploring, and always reaching for meaning. Because the more we learn about the universe, the more it seems to whisper back. There's always more to know, and maybe more to believe. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today. If this conversation sparked something in you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more explorations into the big questions. We'd love to have you with us.